Unit 15 Challenges to Traditional Bureaucratic Paradigm. Structure 15.0 Learning Outcome 15.1 Introduction 15.2 Bureaucratic Administration, Characteristic Features 15.3 Contemporary Bureaucratic Paradigm 15.3.1 New Public Administration 15.3.2 New Public Management 15.3.3 Organizational Humanism 15.3.4 New Public Service 15.4 New Tasks Ahead 15.5 Conclusion 15.6 Key Concepts 15.7 References and Further Reading 15.8 Activities 15.0 Learning Outcome. After studying this unit, you will be able to understand the characteristics of traditional bureaucracy, discuss the features of the contemporary bureaucratic paradigm, and explain the challenges and new tasks for bureaucracy based on the approaches of New Public Administration, NPA, New Public Management, NPM, and New Public Service, NPS. 15.1 Introduction. State, society and administration have assumed new roles and responsibilities in the wake of changes induced by the processes of globalization, liberalization, and privatization. State has changed from an administrative state to a cybernetic state. The governments today have to work under greater pressures emanating from the global reforms as also under pressures from within their countries. The reforms and pressures call for a new role for the state and bureaucracy. They are no longer the single and direct provider of goods and services. They are now required to be the facilitators and regulators. Multi-stakeholders, citizens, communities, community-based organizations, non-profit organizations, private agencies, corporate bodies are all involved in public service delivery. The role of the administration today is to foster public dialogue, collaboration, partnership, decentralization, and citizens' involvement in day-to-day governance. These changes have been enunciated by the approaches of New Public Administration, New Public Management, Organizational Humanism, and New Public Service. These approaches, which are an integral part of effective administrative reforms, have necessitated a reassessment of the traditional role and responsibilities of the public servants. They have thrown open new tasks and challenges before the bureaucracy, calling for a shift from the conservative and stereotypical traditional role. Bureaucrats have to now adopt new roles and display flexibility, openness, accountability, responsiveness, and citizen orientation. The Weberian concept of bureaucracy and its critique have already been discussed in Unit 13 of this course. The contemporary context of bureaucracy with special reference to India has also been analyzed. This unit would therefore not touch upon these pertinent issues. Instead, the focus in the following sections will be on how the approaches such as NPA, NPM, and NPS have challenged the traditional public administration paradigm and set new tasks before the bureaucracy. To set the stage for this discussion, we will briefly highlight the traditional features of bureaucratic administration and explain the reasons that call for a paradigm shift. 15.2 Bureaucratic Administration, Characteristic Features. Bureaucracy is a systematic organization of tasks and individuals into a pattern, which most effectively achieves the desirable ends of the collective efforts. It is a regulated administrative system organized on a series of interrelated offices. The concept was first coined by Vincent de Gournay in 1765. Later, it was fully developed by Max Weber, who referred to it as a sociological concept, pervading all societies, capitalist or socialist. According to him, bureaucracy was the rationalization of collective activities. In an attempt to develop the concept, Weber laid down the structural and behavioral features of bureaucracy. The main features of bureaucracy can be identified as under I. Specialization of tasks and division of labor for accomplishment of goals. E. Consistent system of abstract rules for uniformity and coordination. E. principle of hierarchy marking accountability for one's actions and also subordinates actions to a higher level officer IV, impersonal and formal conduct V, employment on the basis of technical qualifications and protection against arbitrary dismissal V, promotions on seniority and merit. Bureaucratic organization will thus be based on the structural principles of division of labor, hierarchy, system of rules, and role specificity. It is meant to display the behavioral patterns of rationality, impersonality, rule orientation, and neutrality. Based on these features, Weber considered a bureaucratic organization technically superior to all other forms of organization. Division of labor led to professionalism and specialization in the organization. With technical qualifications, there came more precision, speed, and reliability in functioning. Hierarchy led to a better distribution of authority and responsibility, and provided for effective supervision. Adherence to rules and regulations left no scope for personal prejudices, whims, and nepotism. Equally, behavioral features of rationality led to orderliness, objectivity, and stability in the organization. Impersonality created an unbiased bureaucracy that worked in the public interest. Thus, Weber tried to create an ideal type of bureaucracy. Despite the envisioned qualities, as laid down by Weber, critics have drawn attention to many of its dysfunctional ties witnessed in its practice. Some of the criticism of Weber's concept has already been discussed in Unit 13. Let us look into a few more problems that Weberian bureaucracy has thrown up. The principle of division of labor and hierarchy led to bigger organizations and hence greater delay in work. This also led to deviation of responsibility with no one accepting responsibility for any action or inaction. Bureaucrats started indulging in empire building. Strict adherence to rules and regulations made them inflexible. Robert Merton found problems with the feature of strict rule application. Selznick, 1943, pointed out that civil servants were too much obsessed with the rules. The bureaucrats were not accountable to the people as their accountability lay only towards the political executive. Mainz, 1965, criticized bureaucracy for its inability to appreciate informal organization. Bureaucrats did not even appreciate social values in policy making. Thus, policy making became a mundane activity. Even though the bureaucrats were governed by conduct rules and code of ethics, actual adherence to these was rare. Hence, corruption became rampant. There was no self-discipline and self-control. They lacked conscientiousness of performance. People viewed them as dishonest and unreliable. Organizational humanism, feelings of shared interests, dialogue, discourse, coordination, leadership, and communication were found lacking in bureaucratic organizations. They were criticized for being centralist, hierarchical, authoritative, and stereotyped. Moreover, bureaucracy, due to its permanent tenure, superior merit, knowledge, professional competence, technical know-how, experience and expertise, has got involved in all aspects of policy cycle. With the legislature lacking the necessary time and expertise, functions pertaining to legislation, issuance of necessary directives and guidelines, etc., have become the responsibility of bureaucracy. It has perfected the technique of rule application, rule interpretation, and rule adjudication, and has become so rigid that it has gradually culminated into an overpowerful entity. Since Unit 13 has already highlighted these features, we will not elaborate these aspects over here. Instead, our focus will be on the alternative approaches to reform bureaucracy. Approaches of New Public Administration, NPA, New Public Management, NPM, Organizational Humanism, and New Public Service, NPS, despite having specific concerns, converge on one pertinent theme. This necessitates that administrators shed their overpowering and elitist character, and change their rigid behavior. Instead of being engrossed in self-interest, they are called upon to empathize with people's problems. They are urged to change their mindset and attitude. Besides being just politically accountable, it is felt that they should also be accountable to multiple stakeholders. They are expected to operate in a transparent fashion and not remain insular and confined to the watertight compartments anymore. It was also expected of them to take the people along, and address their problems through close interactions. 3. These approaches have set forth new tasks for bureaucracy and have challenged the traditional paradigm. The objective is to usher in a new work culture that would help bureaucracy to go beyond the traditional norms of public service neutrality, anonymity, political accountability, and rationality. We will now have a detailed discussion on these new tasks that have signaled a shift in the traditional ways of bureaucratic functioning. 15.3 Contemporary Bureaucratic Paradigm. Based on participation, interaction, and coordination with people, these new approaches have opened up distinct possibilities of rebuilding and restoring a culture of public accountability and public trust in bureaucracy. These approaches are New Public Administration, NPA, New Public Management, NPM, Organizational Humanism, and New Public Service, NPS. 15.3.1 New Public Administration. NPA was an outcome of the movement of a group of scholars who gathered at the Minnow Brook Conference in the late 1960s in USA. The movement challenged the tenets of the old public administration and came up with alternatives to the traditional bureaucratic administration. It laid emphasis on openness, trust, and communication within such organizations, which were essentially characterized by centralization, hierarchy, authority, control, and secrecy. NPA called for a qualitative transformation of bureaucracy, which had to be relevant. Public administration should be relevant to the changing times. It has to cope with the environmental changes. Bureaucrats cannot be status quo oriented anymore. Rather, they have to address the realities of public life. They have to take into view the contemporary problems and issues in policy making. To be relevant, they have to be guided by the political, social, and moral implications of their actions. Value-based administration. Bureaucracy has to be based on norms and values. It cannot be value neutral and follow the methodology of logical positivism. It has to be concerned about the problems of the society and has to respect democratic values and ethics in official functioning. The bureaucratic actions have to be evaluated and judged on the basis of values. In the words of George Frederickson, an administrator has therefore to be more public than generic, prescriptive than descriptive, client-oriented than institution-oriented, and normative than neutral. Equity. George Frederickson considered equity to be the underlying factor in all political and administrative decision-making. It is necessary for a public servant to develop and defend criteria and measures of equity and to understand the impact of public services on the dignity and well-being of citizens. Bureaucracy has to rise above partisanship and nepotism, and be proactive to major social issues. C.F. Marini, 1971. 4. Change. NPA called for change orientation on the part of public servants. They should not be status quo oriented but should undergo an attitudinal change. They have to shun over centralizing and over expanding tendencies. The public servants should be open and flexible enough to upgrade their knowledge and skills in order to improvise and excel. 15.3.2 New Public Management. As we read in Unit 14, NPM is a reform movement calling for management reforms in the public sector organizations. It gained momentum in the developed countries like the UK, New Zealand, and Australia, and in no time spread to developing countries as well. It was argued that bureaucracy's enormous structures and cumbersome procedures had been inhibiting action and change. The movement questioned the rigidity of the bureaucratic organizations and their lack of responsiveness to the citizens. It called upon the public administrators to be entrepreneurs performing market-based functions and compete with diverse providers of services. Public administrators are expected to redefine the clients as customers and offer them choices. They have to work towards achievement of efficiency, economy, and effectiveness. They have to focus on results, profits, and outcomes, than just inputs and processes. NPM aims at restructuring administrative organization by downsizing, privatizing, and opening up. While fixing standards of integrity and conduct, NPM aims to make the civil servants accountable to the customers. The public servants have to decentralize and encourage participation in management. Emphasis is laid on appropriate training in order to strengthen the professional competence of the public servants. While applying NPM reforms to the higher level bureaucracy, 4 significant tasks that the bureaucracy should perform have been suggested: development of a vision, disaggregation of the administrative structure, downsizing of the civil services, decentralization of powers, functions, service delivery. We will now discuss them one by one. Development of a vision. The bureaucracy should have a mission statement entailing its vision on organization and development. This will spell out for them the national goals, role and responsibilities, quality standards, levels of efficiency, incentives for creativeness, innovation in public service delivery, and direction of the bureaucracy. The development of a vision will help them to respond to the changing environment, clearly understand the government's objectives, comprehend the roles they have to perform in pursuance of national goals, and act as professional managers with greater freedom of operation and discretion. They will be more concerned with results and outcomes rather than just the inputs and processes, as in the traditional form of administration. There will be fixed performance standards and measures, which will make them more accountable as their work will be assessed in quantitative terms. They have to be now responsive to the customers and work towards fetching them. 5. Maximum satisfaction. Mission statement will make them proactive rather than only reactive. The mission-driven public administration will enhance performance management and delivery. It will also develop a sense of belongingness in the administrators. Disaggregation of the administrative structure. NPM promotes breaking up of a large administrative organization into several decentralized units with requisite autonomy, independent budgets, and maintaining an arm's length relationship with each other. Illustratively, the Department of Personnel and Training, DOPNT, in the Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances, Pensions and Pensioners' Welfare, Government of India could be entrusted with the functions of promotion and selection, while the placement of the officials of the rank of Joint Secretary may be given to the UPSC. The vigilance matters may be disaggregated to central, state vigilance commissions. Thus, the DOPNT will be a strategic center for the policy functions relating to officials. This will clarify the roles of officials, and also strengthen their accountability. A greater degree of merit, transparency, and professionalism would be achieved through such institutionalization of promotion, placements, and transfers. Downsizing of the civil services. NPM reforms aim at a meaningful review of the cadre and ex-cadre posts, abolition of redundant posts, readjustment of the intake of the new entrants as per the socio-economic requirements, and undertaking of refresher programs to prevent stagnation. The Indian Administrative Service has to put up at least 15 years of service in the field to qualify for the Secretariat. The Secretariat levels should be reduced. These could comprise senior executives, and supervisory, supporting staff. This will reduce the unnecessary delays in functioning. Voluntary retirement should also be enforced. This will induce young entrants into the system. Decentralization of powers, functions. With decentralization, the bureaucrats have to transfer local functions to the state and local governments. This will bring the centers of decision-making nearer to the people and empower the local administration in solving the civic problems. There will be lesser levels and lesser political intervention, and hence there will be lesser delays, lesser corruption, lesser overheads, leading to an efficient service delivery. This will result in empowered communities who will develop a conducive mindset for participation and motivation. The commitment of civil servants to the administrative goals will also be strengthened. Service delivery. NPM advocates the use of computerized monitoring of the public grievance redressal machinery for ensuring its effective functioning. Bureaucrats who have public dealings should be given training in customer orientation. They should be publicly accessible through the formal and informal channels of feedback. This will make them customer driven and citizen friendly. The quality of public services will improve, and this will restore the public accountability of the bureaucrats. Equally, the rules and regulations should be simplified and the public services should be made hassle free. Bureaucrats should work towards institutionalizing change by instilling values and building capabilities of employees in service delivery. Alternate mechanisms of service delivery, such as the market and civil society organizations. 6. Have to be involved to give wider choices to the citizens. User fees for use of water, health, education can be charged to improve quality and accountability for these services. Besides, contracting out of services, public-private partnership with non-profit bodies etc. have also to be adopted by the administration for economical and easy delivery of services to the people. Network governance is thus emerging as a new approach as distinguished from the traditional bureaucratic way of administration with the help of hierarchic, insular and input-oriented, not output-oriented, structures and processes. We will read more on network governance in Unit 22 of our MA course 013. NPM propounds the use of information and communication technology, ICT, as a revolutionary mode of service delivery. The bureaucrats have therefore to make use of interactive digital equipments, interactive online services, internet, intranets, and extranets to improve organizational efficiency. To improve the service delivery, citizens' charters should be displayed in public offices. Necessary and useful information should be imparted through television, radio, newspaper, and internet. Computerized information should be made available at the office reception. Information counters have to be set up in public institutions and offices like schools, post offices, village health centers, railway stations, hospitals, which can act as one-stop consolidated information shop. All office records should be computerized, and important rules and procedures should be electronically published. Public servants should make use of Management Information System, MIS, in decision making. With MES, they can monitor and implement various developmental programs. The use of hotlines and email facility will enable the citizens to bring cases of bureaucratic delay, corruption and other misdemeanor to the forefront. Administrators can also get feedback from the people on developmental programs. We shall be discussing the significance of MIS in detail in Unit 15 of MPA 013. The performance of these tasks will lead to better communication between the administration and the citizens. Informed decisions and improved service delivery, quick and smooth access to useful information, empowerment of citizens, openness and transparency in administration, monitoring and accountability, clean administration. 15.3.3 Organizational Humanism. Traditional bureaucracy placed limitations on the role of informal organization and human relations. It placed emphasis on formal structures based on hierarchy, unity of command, centralization, authority, and control. But now there is a shift to the larger needs and concerns of the people, both inside and outside the organization. Today, administrators have to give importance to informal structures in the organizations. According to Chris Argyris, organizational humanism requires administrators to develop and employ skill in self-awareness, effective diagnosing, helping individuals grow and making them more creative. According to Denhart and Denhart, it is required of the public servants to provide an organizational climate for open discourse and dialogue. Bureaucracy has to take into account variations in human behavior. Formal relations have to be supplemented by informal relations. 7. Administration devoid of values and informal relations evokes the rational basis for bureaucratic functioning. This does not promote individual and organizational growth. Rather, administrators have to adhere to democratic values and open interaction in policy making. This will replace the authoritative structure with a participative structure. Then, each employee will contribute her knowledge and competence to the best of their abilities. An environment of self discipline also has to be created to make employees self managing and self governed. This will help in individual growth and organizational development. Organizational humanism also extends to policy making. When the public servants or the bureaucrats formulate the policies, they have to be humanistic enough to incorporate the democratic values of equity, justice, and fairness. Likewise, they have to ensure implementation with full honesty and integrity so as to enable the benefits to reach the needy and the deprived sections of the society. 15.3.4 New Public Service. Contribution to this movement mainly came from Robert B. Dinhart and Janet V. Dinhart, both of whom propounded the basic tenets of New Public Service, NPS, in total contrast to the traditional bureaucratic administration. This approach focused on serving the public interest as the primary role of public servants. The public servants have to shun their over-centralizing and elitist tendencies, and work with people. Dinhart and Dinhart have argued for a model of new public service based on citizenship, democracy and community service in the public interest as an alternative to the dominant models based on economic theory and self-interest. Let us now throw light on the major tenets of NPS. Democratic citizenship. According to Dinhart and Dinhart, 2003, theory of democratic citizenship is based on public interest. The theory bases itself on the concepts of community and democratic values. The theory advocates that people are not self-centered, but are guided by the feelings of community values. The citizens take a broader view of public affairs and actively participate in matters of community interest. They develop a sense of belonging, a concern for the whole, and a moral bond with the community of which they are a part. Hence, bureaucracy has to abide by the spirit of democratic citizenship. It has to promote democratic values of fairness, integrity, honesty, responsiveness, equity, justice, commitment, accountability, trust, sharing, public interest, leadership, dialogue, participation, collaboration, and empowerment. This will be fulfilled by seeking public involvement in governance. Here, bureaucracy has to set grounds for people's involvement and participation in decision making. They have to help citizens grow as vibrant and responsible members of the society. Administrators have to now see, as King and Stivers, 1998, put it, citizens are citizens rather than voters or clients or customers, and should share authority and reduce control, and should have trust in the efficacy of collaboration. They have to decentralize authority, and share it with people. They have to be responsive and believe in joint responsibility in problem solving. They have to facilitate and create forums, spread awareness, and educate and train people to work in collaboration. They have to be guided by the feelings of community and public interest and be people-centered rather than only work-centered. This will enhance public trust and public accountability. Community approach. According to Dinhart and Dinhart, Op. Cit. Community is seen as a conglomeration of human beings where everybody tends to associate with each other. 8. For common good. It enables one to pursue one's goals and also adjust to the social system. Community incorporates diversity and teaches one to share values. It promotes mutual trust and care, facilitates teamwork, renders effective communication through dialogue and discussions, resolves conflicts, works for public interest, promotes trust, encourages education and participation, and connects individuals with the larger community concerns. Bureaucracy has to work towards building communities. Administrators have to work towards developing relations among and within the communities. They can hold meetings, discussions, and dialogue through face-to-face interactions and convince them to participate and decide about things. By maintaining a continuous and consistent dialogue, bureaucracy can promote participation of the community. This will help administration to know, understand, and take cognizance of their needs. Administrative policies benefit from the inputs of the community. The forming of social capital and networks among and within the communities has to be given impetus. Even the grassroots movements have to be seriously considered. This will make the administration aware of the basic problems faced by the communities. They have to disseminate requisite and timely information about development programs. Information and facilitation counters and community centers should be set up to provide easy accessibility to information. By jointly participating in public service delivery, connectivity is established. With community monitoring, evaluation, and implementation of policies, administration is able to get concrete feedback. This also leads to education and mobilization of the masses. Now, we will explain the new tasks for bureaucracy is propounded by NPS. 15.4 New task ahead. Network management. Bureaucracy has to undertake governance reforms like partnerships, interactive policymaking, and network management to deal with complex interdependencies between public and private actors. Today, bureaucracy has to work with multiple actors: political parties, constitutional and electoral bodies, private sector, interest groups, and the civil society to arrive at decisions. Instead of directly designing and delivering services, the bureaucrats have to assimilate the views and interests of multi-stakeholders in designing and delivery. They have to create platforms of expression to varied interests and groups and make them share and appreciate each other's interests. Instead of just following politically defined objectives, they have to pursue varied objectives of multiple stakeholders when it comes to designing policies. Thus, public servants are network managers. They have to interact, debate, and discuss with multiple actors' interests to shape up public policies. This is contrary to the traditional policy making, where the policies emanated as a result of decision making between the legislature and the bureaucrats. Now, bureaucracy has to set the direction and act in concert with the multiple groups in understanding issues, setting joint solutions, and also implementing them jointly. Bureaucracy has to move beyond the hierarchical control in the light of decentralization of policy interests. It has to be a negotiator and a facilitator. It needs to create the platform, set the agenda, invite various groups to participate, and generate commonly agreed solutions. Thus, policies and decisions emerge as a consensus representing multiple interests. 9. Thus, the bureaucrat has to be I. Articulator and integrator of interests, E. Conciliator, mediator, and adjudicator, and E. Contributor of expertise, skills, and resources. Articulating public interest. Public interest is vital and necessary for the sustenance of bureaucracy. Public interest is no longer a definition of political leaders, but it has to be, as we just read, an outcome of people's dialogue and participation. It has to be the major aim of the bureaucrats. For achieving it, they have to create unrestricted settings for the people in which they can come together and involve in real process of dialogue and discourse. This will help people and bureaucrats to understand each other, address the common issues, agree on joint solutions, and implement in the public interest. This will also set the direction for the development of community, society, and nation. Thus, public interest will not emerge as a byproduct of administrative action, rather, it will emerge out of the collective and shared actions of the people and the bureaucrats. It will not emanate from individual choices, rather, it will spring out of shared feelings and joint actions of the community. Public servants or the bureaucrats have to therefore ensure that the entire process of decision making and solutions emerging out of such interactions fulfills the democratic norms of justice, fairness, and equity. A bureaucrat has to be a leader, steward, and emissary of public interest. In the pursuance of public interest, the bureaucrats have to I. Create settings for dialogue, E. Design specific steps to enable everyone to move towards the same direction of goal achievement, E. Lay down roles and responsibilities, IV. Provide civic education in community interests and community responsibility, V. Create civic leaders, V. Reinstate and encourage a sense of civic pride and responsibility, V. Support groups and individuals with community feelings, V. Be open, accessible, and responsive. Multi-dimensional accountability. Under the traditional system, bureaucrats were accountable to the political executive and to their superior officials. They implemented the decisions of the political leaders and adhered to the rules and regulations in the conduct of their work. They followed the organizational norms and abided by the directives of superior officials. They exercised very limited discretion and performed duties delegated to them. As there was no people's involvement in policy making, bureaucrats did not owe much accountability towards them. They were directly accountable only to the political leaders and officials. Under NUPS, public accountability of the bureaucrats has become multifaceted. Their accountability has become democratic. They are responsible to the multiple actors, including the community. Today, administration has to participate and work together with the people in fulfilling their wants. They are answerable to the people in the 10 exercise of discretion. The bureaucrats have to be responsive to them. Thus, their accountability is not just one-dimensional, but it is now multidimensional. Multidimensional accountability makes them legally, democratically, professionally, and politically responsible. They must respect and follow the constitution of the country. They are subject to the law of the land. They have to abide by the democratic values of justice, fairness, and equity. Moral values and ethical norms have to be accounted for. Thus, they have to go beyond the traditional role of public service neutrality, anonymity, and ministerial responsibility. Multifaceted accountability and public trust have to be instituted and built. Therefore, today the accountability of the bureaucrats is quite exacting. They have to work under the controls exercised by legislature, executive, and judiciary, adhere to professional standards, give priority to citizens' preferences, abide by values and ethics, win public legitimacy, respect public law, and balance public interest. Vincent and Crothers, 1998, and Terry, 1993, have put it that public servants are called to be responsible actors in a complex governance system, in which they may play the roles of facilitators, reformers, interest brokers, public relations experts, crisis managers, analysts, advocates, and most importantly, moral leaders and stewards of public interest. Shared leadership. The traditional bureaucracy worked on the basis of a top-down approach. Bureaucratic leadership and their authority and control were not a shared one. The policies were formulated without citizens' participation. Bureaucracy was hierarchical, centralized, and controlling. But today, when we talk about networks and citizens' participation in governance, bureaucracy has to share its leadership. They have to share leadership with the employees of the organization they partner with and also with the multiple stakeholders. Thus, they have to evoke multi-stakeholders' interests, values, and goals characterized by mutual respect, accommodation, and support in policies, values and interests of individual members of the organization in decision-making, responsibility, participation, partnership, and civic-mindedness in the employees and citizens, consensus building, two-way communication, and information sharing, passion, commitment, and perseverance. Strategic management. Bureaucrats have to be strategic managers. They should take recourse. Strategic management to form partnerships. This will be especially useful when they deal with multi-stakeholders, as it will help them to negotiate and arrive at a consensus in policy. 11. Making. This tool will also help the bureaucrats to make improvements in their organizations by guiding and conditioning the behavior of the employees. They can also place their organizations to cooperate and partner in joint ventures with other organizations. The bureaucrats will thus be able to develop an intellectual foresightedness about public services and appreciate planning and participation in public service delivery. They will also be able to cope with the changing environment and innovate to stay in tune with the changing times. 15.5 Conclusion. An alternative to the traditional approach to bureaucracy can be found in the new perspectives of NPM, organizational humanism and new public service. These type of concepts, if carefully implemented, could make bureaucracy more accountable, efficient and transparent. This unit discussed these aspects which would ensure that the public servants or the bureaucrats are no more guided by the conventional or traditional norms. Rather, they are able to understand the need to focus on the following when it comes to decision making: public interest, not individual interest; serving citizens, not just clients, customers; timeliness, reliability, and responsibility in service delivery, not delay; fiscal responsibility, not manipulation, corruption; joint partnership with people, not centralization; shared values and interests with the people, not neutrality and anonymity; participation with citizens and employees; adherence to democratic, constitutional, and professional values, not sidelining the rule of law; transparency in disseminating information; responsiveness to multiple and conflicting norms, not just political accountability; creation of forums of dialogue and consensus building; mutual listening and mutual learning; leadership, and civic education. 15.6 Key Concepts. Citizens Charter. Citizens Charter came into being on the initiative of Common Cause in the UK in 1991 to make the administration more accessible, responsive, transparent, and efficient. The aim of the charters is to make available to the citizens all relevant information. Citizens have a right to demand accountability, quality, and choice of services by the government departments. This is facilitated by charters. Citizens' charters promote the citizens' entitlement to easy, unhassled, quality, efficient, and transparent access to public goods and services. It is a positive step towards a citizen-friendly administration. 12. Cybernetics. Norbert Wiener, a mathematician and social philosopher, coined the word cybernetics, from Greek word meaning steersman. He defined it as a science of communication and control in the animal and the machine. The concept grew out of Shannon's information theory, which was designed to optimize the transfer of information through communication channels, and the feedback concept used in engineering control systems. A cybernetic state is the one that makes use of multiple channels of information and communication technology for all its governance strategies and programs. W. Indian Online. Com, BISC, Pharma, JEMMA. HTMN, PESPMC1. WAB. AC. B. ASHK, Cybernetics. HTM. Extranet. It refers to an intranet that is partially accessible to authorized outsiders. Whereas an intranet is accessible only to people who are members of the same company or organization, an extranet provides various levels of accessibility to outsiders. One can access an extranet only if one has a valid username and password, and one's identity determines which parts of extranet one can view. Extranets are becoming very popular means for business partners to exchange information. Management Information System, MIS. It is an information system, typically computer-based, that is used within an organization. It is also described by the World Net as a system consisting of the network of all communication channels used within an organization. An information system comprises all components that collect, manipulate, and disseminate data or information. It usually includes hardware, software, communication system, and the data itself. As an area of study, it is commonly referred to as information technology management. C. Web links. 15.7 References and further reading. Argyris, Chris. Personality and Organization, cited in J. B. Dinhart and Robert B. Dinhart, 2003, New Public Service, M. A. Sharp, New York.